All right, get ready to dive deep. Today we're exploring algorithmic trading. But, and here's the twist, we'll be focusing on something called monkey tests.
And no, we won't be watching monkeys pick stocks, although that would be pretty funny to see.
Yeah, no kidding. So the material we've got here is a bit technical. It's from a Thai language video tutorial, so bear with me, about advanced monkey tests. So maybe you can help me out here a little bit. What exactly are monkey tests, and how are they used in algorithmic trading?
Okay, so imagine you've just spent weeks developing this super complex trading strategy, back-tested it, optimized it, you're feeling really good, but how do you really know it's good? Like, how do you know you haven't just been, kind of lucky?
Okay, I'm listening. So where do these monkey tests come in?
They're a way to test your strategy. To compare it against, well, random decisions, think of it like you're pitting your strategy against a monkey throwing darts at a list of stocks.
Okay, so if my strategy can't even beat a dart-throwing monkey.
Yeah. It might be time to go back to the drawing board. Seriously, though, that's what's so cool about monkey tests. They cut through all the noise and tell you, is this strategy actually good? Or am I just seeing random luck?
I like that, cutting through the noise. Speaking of which, our source material refers to these as advanced unbiased monkey tests. So what makes them so advanced?
Well, the idea of comparing against random choices, that's the basic part. Advanced tests get more and more sophisticated. Instead of just picking stocks randomly, they focus on the timing of trades, like when to enter and exit a position.
So it's not just what to trade, but when to trade it. Got it. So how does that work exactly?
Say your strategy is based on breakouts, right? When a stock price breaks through a certain level, a basic monkey test might just randomly choose stocks. But an advanced test, it also randomizes the entry point, maybe buying a bit before the breakout, right at the breakout, or even a little after.
Ah, I see. So it's testing if that precise entry point matters, or if you could just buy randomly around the breakout and get similar results. Clever.
Right.
Anything else that makes these tests special?
Usually they use what's called a Monte Carlo simulation. Now, it might sound, kind of intimidating, but it's really useful for evaluating these trading strategies.
Okay, walk me through it. What is a Monte Carlo simulation, and why is it so important here?
Imagine being able to run your strategy thousands of times, each time with slightly different random variables. That's what this does. A Monte Carlo simulation. It lets you see how the strategy does in a whole bunch of different possible scenarios.
So instead of just looking at one backtest, you're creating like a whole universe of possible outcomes.
Exactly. And by looking at how all those outcomes are spread out, you get a much better sense of whether your strategy is truly skillful or if it's just, luck.
All right, let's get into the details here. In the transcripts, the instructor is setting up a test using AMI Broker software. Can you explain what's happening there?
Sure. One key element is they're using something called a market class analysis, which sounds a little vague, but it probably means they're looking at market conditions to define entry and exit rules. So they're trying to find breakouts that are more likely to be successful based on how the overall market is doing.
So not just any random breakout, but finding the right ones to target. Makes sense. What else are they factoring into this setup?
Even with monkey tests, you still need to manage risk. You'll see they're using stop loss orders and trailing stops to try and limit potential losses.
Right. Even a monkey can get lucky sometimes. But managing risk well, that's what separates the pros. So how do they measure how well the strategy's doing? Like, how do they compare the monkey's results to the actual trading strategy?
They look at things like net profit, compound annual return, and maximum drawdown, all standard ways to judge how a trading strategy is performing. And the key is they're comparing these metrics to the ones from the monkey tests.
So if the strategy is consistently doing better than the monkey, randomly,
that's a really good sign.
it means it's probably skill, not just a lucky streak.
Right. But if the strategy's results are kind of just average mixed in with the monkey's results, then those winning trades might have just been, a fluke. But hey, that's good information to have.
Definitely better to know now than later. Now, I noticed the sources talked about keeping the number of trades the same in both the strategy and the monkey tests. Why is that important?
Think of it this way. If one strategy makes 100 trades a year and another only makes 10, well, the one with more trades has a better chance of getting some big wins, even if it's just random, like flipping a coin. The more you flip it, the more likely you are to get a bunch of heads or tails in a row. even though the odds are still 50-50.
So by keeping the number of trades the same, you're making sure the comparison is fair. You're comparing apples to apples.
Yeah, it's about isolating the skill,
Hmm.
not who got luckier or who took more risks.
Okay, this is all super interesting, but I want to bring it back to you, the listener, for a second. How can you use these monkey ideas in your own life, even if you're not a day trader?
Think about it. We all have things we think we're good at. Maybe you're great at picking stocks. Or maybe you're a marketing genius because your last campaign went viral.
Or maybe you're like me. You think you're amazing at Wordle until you realize it might just be a lucky streak.
Right. It's important to ask yourself, how can I test this? How can I introduce some randomness or control for other variables to see if it's really skill or just luck?
It's like that saying, don't confuse brains with the bull market. We can all get a little carried away sometimes. Start believing our own hype. But these monkey tests, they're a good way to stay grounded, to keep our egos in check.
They force us to ask that question, what if I'm not as good at this as I think I am?
And that's where it gets interesting. Because once you've faced that possibility, it can be kind of freeing. It takes the pressure off.
Yeah. It lets you experiment more, take more risks, be less afraid of failing. Because you realize that not everything is in your control. Sometimes even the best strategies don't work out.
That's part of the process, right? It's about learning and adapting and always testing your assumptions.
Exactly. And who knows, you might find that embracing a little randomness actually leads to some unexpected breakthroughs.
Okay, that's a really interesting idea. We started with monkey tests for trading, and now we're talking about innovation and the power of randomness.
Well, that's the beauty of exploration, right? You never know where it might lead you.
Well said. So it looks like we've reached the end of part 1 of our deep dive. But don't worry, there's more to come. We'll be back soon to explore even deeper into this fascinating topic.
So let's get back to that example with the AMI broker software.
Right, where the instructor was setting up the advanced monkey test for that breakout strategy.
Exactly. And remember how we talked about market class analysis? Well, this is where that comes in. Instead of testing every single breakout, they're probably filtering for breakouts that happen under certain market conditions.
Oh, so they're being picky about which breakouts they even look at. It's not just random anymore.
Right. It's about making the monkey test more relevant to the actual strategy. Like it's like saying, okay, monkey, you can only throw darts at this specific part of the board.
Got it. So it's not just if a strategy can beat random chance, but if it can do it under certain conditions, that makes it a lot more sophisticated. So what's next in the example? What happens next?
Well, they run that Monte Carlo simulation we talked about, so they're not just testing the strategy once, they're testing it thousands of times, each time with little variations added randomly. Like they might randomize the entry point, the exit point, or even the risk management settings.
So it's like you're shaking things up to see if the strategy can handle different situations.
Exactly. And by running all these simulations, they create a whole spread of possible outcomes, kind of like a bell curve. Some simulations do great, some do terribly, most are somewhere in the middle.
And then they compare how the actual strategy did to that spread. Right?
Yeah. They want to see where the strategy falls on that bell curve. If it's consistently better than most of the random simulations, well, that's a good sign.
So it means it's more likely to be skill, not just luck.
Exactly. But if the strategy is just kind of average,
yeah,
blended in with the random results, well, then maybe those winning trades were just, a fluke. And it's good to know that.
Absolutely. Better to be realistic about it. I remember the sources mentioned something about keeping the number of trades the same, like keeping it the same for the strategy and for the monkey tests.
Yeah.
Why is that so important?
Okay, so think about it. Let's say one strategy makes 100 trades a year and another one only makes 10, the one with more trades. It just naturally has a better chance of getting some big wins, even if it's just random luck. Like if you're flipping a coin, the more you flip it, the more likely you are to get like a streak of heads or tails, even though the odds are still, 50-50.
So by keeping the number of trades the same, you're making it a fair comparison.
Exactly. You want to isolate the skill, not just who got the luckiest breaks.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about how these monkey tests can help us see if a trading strategy is really good or just lucky. But let's step back for a minute. How can our listeners use this monkey wisdom, in their own lives, even if they're not into trading?
We all have things we think we're good at.
Right.
Right. Maybe you're awesome at, I don't know, picking winning stocks. Or maybe you think you're a marketing whiz because, your last campaign was a hit.
Or maybe, just maybe, you think you're a Wordle champion until you realize it might just be a lucky streak.
That's it. The key is to ask yourself, how can I test this? How can I mix in some randomness? Or control for other things that might be affecting the outcome, so I can see if it's really skill or just, dumb luck.
It's like that saying, don't confuse brains with a bull market. We can all fall for that, start believing our own hype, right?
Yeah.
But these monkey tests, they're a way to keep ourselves honest, keep our egos in check.
They force us to face that question. What if I'm not as good at this as I think?
And that's the interesting part, because once you've thought about that possibility, it can be kind of a relief. Like, it takes the pressure off.
It lets you experiment more, take more risks.
Yeah.
Be less afraid of messing up, because you know that not everything is in your control.
Yeah.
Sometimes even the best strategies just don't work out.
But that's okay. It's all part of it, right? It's all about learning and adapting and constantly testing your ideas.
Yeah. And you never know. You might even find that embracing a little randomness can actually lead to some really cool discoveries, to some real innovation.
So we started talking about monkey tests for trading. And now we're talking about innovation and the power of randomness.
That's what's so great about exploring new ideas, isn't it? You never know where it'll take you.
So true. So it looks like we've reached the end of part 2 of our deep dive. Don't worry, we'll be back soon with part 3, where we'll continue this exploration and see where it leads us. Learn from the monkey.
I gotta say, I didn't see that coming. What do you mean by that?
Well, so far we've been talking about how these monkey tests help us figure out if a strategy is actually good or just, a lucky streak.
Right, exposing those illusions of skill.
But what if, instead of trying to beat the monkey, we try to learn from it, from its randomness? What could we learn from that?
Now I'm really curious. How can that teach us anything useful? I thought the whole point was to, reduce randomness and be more in control. That's how we usually think about it, yeah. But what if that's not always the right way to look at it? In a lot of complex systems, randomness isn't the enemy. It can actually be a source of creativity, of adaptability, even resilience.
That's a really interesting idea. Can you give me an example? Like, how does that actually work?
Think about evolution. It's driven by random mutations, right? And most mutations are bad. But every now and then, a random mutation creates a trait that gives an organism a benefit, an advantage.
Yeah.
And that's how species adapt and evolve over time.
So are you saying that by introducing some randomness, we can actually create opportunities for breakthroughs, things we never would have thought of otherwise?
Exactly. It's like shaking up a snow globe and seeing what new patterns form.
Okay, I can see how that might work in computer science, for example, with things like evolutionary algorithms. But what about trading? Or even just, decision-making in general?
Instead of trying to build a trading system that's perfectly predictable, that eliminates all risk, what if we embraced a little randomness? What if we designed systems that are more flexible, more adaptable, systems that can handle, unexpected changes in the market?
So instead of trying to outsmart the market, we're learning to work with it, to kind of dance with it.
Yeah.
We're accepting that there will always be some unpredictability, and we're building that into our strategies.
Exactly. And this idea, it's bigger than just trading. Think about any field where there's innovation. A lot of the most groundbreaking discoveries, they happen by accident, by chance, by embracing the unknown.
You're right. There are so many scientific discoveries that were made by pure chance. Penicillin, X-rays, even the microwave oven, right? It makes you wonder what other amazing discoveries are out there. Discoveries that we're missing because we're too focused on control and predictability.
It's about finding that balance between planning and being open to the unexpected. We need solid strategies, good frameworks, but we also need to be open to new possibilities and willing to change course when we need to. This
has been a really fascinating conversation. We started with monkey tests for algorithmic trading, and we've ended up with a whole new perspective on innovation, on the power of randomness.
And that's what makes these deep dives so exciting. You never know where they'll lead.
Well said. Well, folks, it looks like we've reached the end of our deep dive for today. Thanks for joining us on this adventure. And remember, the next time you're facing a challenge or trying to solve a problem, don't be afraid to embrace a little monkey business. You never know, you just might stumble upon a brilliant solution that you never would have expected.